Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and with New Year's resolution, people about to come in, a lot of people are going to be focused on weight loss, and then we're going to have the summer coming. There's going to be a lot of you younger guys out there focused on cutting, and a lot of people worry about water retention. They worry about stalls and weight loss, everything else due to bloat or retaining water, and this is something that we need to talk about a little bit. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And people need to understand that you really shouldn't worry about water retention when cutting. In fact, taking efforts to do something about it can be detrimental to your performance, your muscle retention, your fat loss, your energy turnover, everything. It's actually not something you should be actively doing. You can actually hurt your results by worrying about it. And part of the thing that I'll point out here is, like, for me, I've been tracking everything with DEXA scans because I've bulked up to 255. I'm down to 215 on my last DEXA scan, so it's been in the same year. I'm going to drop down to 200 coming up here soon. I'm not worried about water retention. In fact, I personally do things to try to hold on to a little more water weight. Some people would be like, what? Why? Because at this moment, my goals are not, do I want to look my best, right? That's not my goals. My goals are body composition change, and there's a big difference between those. And a lot of guys, so we'll talk about that for a moment here. See, a lot of the guys are like, well, I want to have that dry look, as they call it. They want to lose the extra water under their skin so that they can look like they have 5 pounds less body fat than they do, right? And there's something to be said for that, because we know that. We see people, Martin Burkham did one the other day showing after he did I think Thanksgiving type meal or whatever back in November, that he had put on like 10 pounds, and he went from having ripped abs to totally flat abdominals with a little bit of a bloat there. And then a few days later, the ripped abs again. So he gained some bloat from that. So it made a big difference. He looked like he gained 10 pounds of body fat. But it was just water. It was water. So a lot of guys worry about that. But here's the thing I would ask you. Is worrying about that worth you losing body fat slower? In other words, if you're not about to be in a situation where you're about to have your shirt off all week, you're not going to be hanging out at the beach, you're not trying to impress some new girl or whatever who's going to see you shirtless for the first time, do you really care? Or is your goal to lose body fat and retain muscle right now? Right? There's a big difference between the two. I would tell you, don't worry about those things. You're eventually going to drop water no matter what you do. It's going to happen eventually. You should be actively seeking to hold on to it. And what I mean is, don't do stupid stuff like cut your sodium. Don't cut your sodium. Keep your salt high. Keep your potassium high, magnesium high. If anything, I'm going to tell most of you guys, if you're training hard and you are losing body fat, the worst thing you can do is let any of your electrolytes drop low. Worst thing you can do. Why? It's going to affect your performance in the gym. If it affects your performance in the gym and the workloads you're able to move, guess what? You're not going to retain muscle as easy. If you're losing muscle faster, your metabolism is going to go down faster. All right, it affects performance. Well, that performance also affects energy output. If you can't do as many squats or benches or deadlifts or pull-ups because you don't have the electrolytes to train on to help facilitate all that and to help with the recovery, you're not going to burn as much calories either. You're not going to have the same afterburn effect after you're lifting. It's going to affect your energy turnover. You're going to lose fat more slowly. You're going to lose muscle faster. You're going to lose fat more slowly, trying to get a certain look all the time. It's not worth it. It's not going to help. That's not what you want. Furthermore, if you are retaining a little bit of extra water, particularly intramuscular water, you understand that creates an anabolic environment for your muscle tissue, and it causes you to burn more energy while you're moving around. It's not a massive difference, but you know what? When you're trying to lose body fat, anything you can do that's going to impact just your general energy turnover, if you can burn an extra 50 calories a day moving around, particularly because just your muscles weigh more, that's more body fat loss. This is in your best interest. Like, you should be saying, okay, how much muscle water retention can I hold on to? That's what you need to be focused on. So what if you end up with a little bit of extra water under your skin? If you're not about to be shirtless and trying to impress people, it doesn't matter. You're not about to hit the scale for a weigh-in for a competitive endeavor, powerlifting meet, wrestling, strength lifting, whatever it is you're about to do, right? You don't have a weigh-in coming. I really and truly would not worry about that 5 or 6 pounds of water. It's only benefiting you. Now, for the other people, the people who aren't serious lifters, what about you guys? People did this stuff, well, I'm in a calorie deficit and I've stopped losing weight and I'm tracking everything perfectly. Oh no. Right? Stuff we need to talk about. It's called swooshes. What happens, your body tries to reach a state of homeostasis. And what it does when you're losing weight, the human organism tries to maintain balance. As you are in a calorie deficit, particularly sometimes as carbs and things get a little lower, your body produces more cortisol. Now, cortisol gets this bad rap as, oh, it makes you store belly fat due to commercials and silly shit you see out there. That's not true. Cortisol itself actually does break down tissue for energy. Cortisol can help mobilize fat. Elevated cortisol, if not careful, can also mobilize muscle proteins for fuel, right? It can do that, but it also mobilizes fat for fuel from fat stores. It's a good thing. The problem is it being a stress hormone, when it starts to go up, as we get into a diet, it can cause water retention. And that's also your body's way of maintaining balance. You know what? Go back to the other point we just made. You're holding extra water weight. You're probably burning more calories. And if you know for a fact you're in a calorie deficit because you're tracking everything, you're doing the same energy, you lost the first 10 pounds doing what you're doing, and you haven't added food back in, and then your weight hasn't moved in 3 weeks, do you know what? That's actually your sign that your body is probably still in your deficit. It is trying to adjust. As long as you know for a fact, you've calculated, you know that you're in a calorie deficit, you know you're in a 500 calorie deficit, because you are tracking what you eat close enough, and you've stalled completely after losing, 10 pounds or more, and you've completely stalled for several weeks. That's actually a good sign. It means your body is trying to put water weight on just to maintain the homeostasis. That means you're also still in a calorie deficit. Because here's what happens. Here's one of the tricks that physique coaches for these bikini competitors and men's physique competitors and stuff do. When they stall, they'll have them add just a little bit of carbs, extra carbs back in. You know why? Bring them back out of the calorie deficit, and carbs can lower cortisol slightly, right? Can blunt cortisol. So what happens? All of a sudden they drop 5 pounds overnight in a day or two. You know why? Because they brought them slightly back out of their caloric deficit. Their body became less stressed. The carbs itself blunted the cortisol a little bit. The lack of a big deficit, blunted the cortisol a little bit, and then they pee the extra water out finally. You're like, great, I lost more weight. Well, also your metabolism just went down a little tiny hair as a result of it. That's going to happen on its own eventually. I would recommend that you don't do that. Now, some people say, well, I need it for my peace of mind. Well, it comes back to the question I would ask you. What's more important, that certain psychological peace of mind to make sure that scale is always moving down? Right? Or losing body fat and retaining muscle and retaining metabolic rate at the best rate possible. Because you need to remember that. You're not always going to be your best during the process. You're not going to be your best during the process. We should be seeking to get the best results possible. And that's what I would tell you. If you are absolutely certain that you're in a calorie deficit, I really and truly wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about it. Like, I've continually lost body fat. I weigh more right now than I did a month ago. Although I'm like 7 months into my cutting. I was 215 on my DEXA the other day. I was 209 a couple weeks before, but I also regained some water. Some slight adjustments in my diet because I wanted to regain some water weight, right? That was the lowest I hit, and then it kind of came back up, and it'll drift back down, and I'll drift down to 200. But the point is, you don't need to worry about it. I know I'm in a calorie deficit. I know I'm losing body fat. So why are you worried about it? So what? Weight loss stalls happen. It will eventually balance out. But the thing is, if you do something to force it to balance out, because you're that obsessed over the number, you might end up losing slightly less body fat in the next couple of weeks as a result of it. I mean, that's not ideal either. So this is what people need to think about in these terms. A lot of times people are worried about the water weight for psychological and perception reasons, but it's not going to help you to worry about it. In fact, that little bit of extra water that you're holding is oftentimes valuable for fat loss, and it's valuable for muscle retention. It's actually helpful to you. It's helpful to you physically, even if psychologically it isn't. So just something that people need to remember with all of this. Just kind of giving a different perspective on it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.